My name is Clint Hill. I was present in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963 at the time of the assassination. This is my personal account of 5 days in November. The trip to Texas was conceived in the spring of 1963 when President Kennedy met with Vice President Johnson and Governor Connally in El Paso. In 1960, they won the election by a very slim margin, and they knew they had to carry some states in the South in order to win in 1964. They needed 2 states with a large number of electoral votes, and they selected Florida and Texas. I was the agent assigned to Mrs. Kennedy, and that is the reason I was on this trip to Texas. The president came to the senior agent and the advance agent and said, look, I can't afford it to appear that there's anything between the people and myself. And when the agents are on the back of the car hovering over me, as he said, it appears that there is something between us, and I can't afford that to be the case. There was nothing written, no documentation, but the word was passed all throughout the Secret Service that from this point on, you would not be on the back of the car unless there was an emergency. As we drove into Dealey Plaza, we turned from Houston Street onto Elm Street. We made a left-hand turn at that point. We were traveling down Elm Street about 120 feet. I heard an explosive noise over my right shoulder. The president grabbed at his throat. He moved to his left. I knew something was wrong. I jumped from my position on the follow-up car and ran toward the presidential vehicle. A second shot rang out. But when I approached the presidential vehicle, the third shot was fired. That shot hit the president in the rear of the head. When that happened, Mrs. Kennedy came up in the rear of the car. She was trying to retrieve some of that material, trying to gather it in her hands. I grabbed her and I put her in the back seat. And when I did this, the president's body fell to its left with his head in her lap. I assumed it was a fatal wound. I turned and gave a thumbs down motion to the agents in the follow-up car to make sure they were aware of the situation. The authorities in Texas said that the state law in Texas required an autopsy to be performed at the hospital in the jurisdiction in which this situation occurred before we could remove the body. We finally said, we're leaving anyway. And so they said, in that event, please have a medical professional remain with the body at all times. We then brought the body of the President of the United States in the casket out to the hearse. We traveled to Love Field from Parkland Hospital. Admiral Berkeley, Mrs. Kennedy, and me in the back of the hearse with the President's body in the casket. At one point after the funeral services at St. Matthew's Cathedral in Washington, D.C., the body was taken out of the church and placed on a caisson. Mrs. Kennedy and the family members came out. The military presence at that time rendered a salute to the president. Mrs. Kennedy noticed that. She leaned over, whispered into John's ear, and John turned, threw his shoulders back, and saluted his father in the casket. Everybody had a tear in their eye, myself included. I was standing very near his mother, and I was a witness to exactly what happened.